Welcome to Crytter Country, the cryptid collect and trading card game. Assume the role of a critter researcher and collect a multitude of different critters, artifacts, phenomenon, and research fields based on North American cryptids, legends, myths, and conspiracies to gain the edge over your opponent and claim the crown of critter research expert. Take part in epic 3 versus 3 battles. Research, evolve, and conspire your way to fame. Or uncover the darker secret lying deep in the heart of Crytter Country. We'll get you started. After that, the critters will tell you anything you need to know.
Hi everybody, my name's Michael. I'm the creator of Crytter Country. I'm just going to go ahead and get started talking about what makes this game a little bit different here. So instead of trying to knock out your opponent or reduce their life points to 0, you're actually trying to go from 0 all the way up to 10 research points. And the main way you're going to do that is by using your active critters to fight your opponent's active critters and knocking them out. So you'll see here you end up gaining points for the amount of cards that you send to the discard pile. We'll go more into that a little bit later. For now, we're going to get started talking about the different kinds of cards. So first of all are the critters. So all the critters are based on cryptids from North America, at least for now. And there are some parts of the card to pay attention to. The first one, of course, being the name. That's going to tell you what it is. The second part being the stage, and that's going to tell you what level the critter is, and also the type. So next we're going to take a look at the stats. So there are hit points, which is how much damage the critter can take before being discarded. Next we have stamina, which is going to be used as points to use the abilities, which most critters have 2 of them. And then there's the speed, which will determine the order of combat. The next thing to take a look at is going to be the passive. So passives are going to be abilities that critters have that generally will take effect once they enter the field. There are, of course, exceptions to that. And each critter has one. For example, Weesquatch here is elusive, meaning he can't be targeted on the turn that he enters the field. Critters can be played to either the research field in the research critter slot or directly to the battlefield. In combat, a critter's speed will determine the turn order, and critters will go in order of that. Their stamina will indicate how many of their moves they can use. For example, Weesquatch here can use Howl and Holler or Stomp 'em down. Next, we'll talk about evolutions. So here we have Yahooligan, who is an evolution of Weesquatch. Now, evolving costs an experience point or action. So we'll grab Lopatrix here, set him down, and pat him. And now we will have 1 experience point to use to evolve Weesquatch. So we'll go ahead and evolve him into Yahooligan. Now, once a critter evolves, you'll gain a research point. You'll also heal any damage, but any ailments you have will remain. So that covers critters just about. So now we'll move on to research fields. Research fields are probably the most unique aspect of this game, and they are used in place of critters for research. They have a cost of 0, which means they are free. And they will have a turn limit. Now, in order to use one, you're going to pat it, which means you're going to turn it sideways, much the same way we did earlier with Lopatrix. So we're going to use that to play legally distinct capture device. And so this is an artifact, and we'll go over what those are in a little bit. But what that's going to let us do is reach into our deck and grab a critter. So we're going to grab Weesquatch here and place him down. Now normally he would go into the active critter slot, but for right now we're just going to go ahead and leave him here for simplicity's sake. Once a research slot is down, a critter can only stay there for the amount of turns that's on the limit printed on the right side of the card. So critters can stay there indefinitely before a research field is placed down, but once a research field is placed down, a critter can only stay there for the amount of terms. For example, here on Critter Research Institute, that's going to be 2. All right, so next we're going to talk about experiment points. So experiment points are basically going to be the mana or action points that you would find in other TCGs. We've kind of talked about them a little bit here, and they work a little differently. So a research field is 1 research point, and a critter is 1 research point. Now, an important thing to note here, for example, we have Yahooligan. Even though that is technically 2 cards, that is 1 critter. So the evolution is only ever going to count for 1 experience point. Um, Meaning that even though you have 2 cards there, there is only going to be 1 experience point that you can gain from having it in a slot. Um, so the way that you would change this, of course, is by having a research field underneath the critter. So once you have a research field and you have a critter down, that slot is now going to be, instead of 1 experiment point, it will now be worth 2. Now, that does mean between both research fields and critters, in total, the amount of experiment points that you have cannot go above 6. At least that is how the game as it is currently stands. So you are able to play cards all the way up to the amount of experiment points that you do have, but you cannot exceed that. So, for example, a lot of phenomenon have a 0 limit, which means that they are instantaneous in their effect, meaning that in theory you could play multiple phenomenon, at least as long as they were of instantaneous effect. Now, once something is pat, it is turned sideways and cannot be used. Now, this just applies for critters. Once they are turned sideways, they cannot be swapped up into the active field. Now let's pick up midway through a turn here and talk about artifacts. Legally distinct capture device is actually a great example for this, so we'll go ahead and put them back for a minute just to bring them out in a second. Yep, here we go. We will pat 1 to go ahead and bring out legally distinct capture device, which means we get to search our deck for a critter. I think today we're going to go ahead and use calf creep. But what we really care about is legally distinct capture device, so we'll zoom in and take a look at the important parts here on artifacts. Much like phenomenon and research fields, you want to take a look at the cost and the limit. The cost is going to be, of course, how many experiment points it takes to play the card onto the field, and the limit is going to be how long the card can stay on the field. Now, almost all artifacts have an infinite limit because they are attachments. An artifact can be equipped to any critter as long as it is in your active or your research slots. It doesn't matter, just as long as you control it, it can be attached to it. Now, if you're playing on the tabletop simulator version, there is a handy rule guide here off to the side, which has all of this information and a lot more in a much more detailed and probably more cohesive way to follow. A copy of this is also available in a link below and also on various platforms. So the last thing we're going to talk about here is turn order. So we'll start a new turn and go from there. We will start by unpatting any research fields that were pat previously. So Wellness Lab will do here. And then we will look for the limit on any cards that has been met. So Yahooligan has already been at Critter Research Institute for the maximum amount of turns. We will move him up and then go to draw a card. So you can see we've drawn Time Dilation Chamber, which costs 3, and we don't quite have enough to use that. Now, we could play Film Reel, but I think instead we're going to opt to save that card for later, so we will pass our turn, which means that it goes to our opponent. Now, our opponent is a little non-committal at the moment, so it looks like they are going to go ahead and pass their turn as well, which means we are going to move straight into the combat phase. Which happens for both players at the same time, and I'll explain what that means here. We're going to take a look at the speed of our critters to determine which one is going to go first between ours and our opponents. So taking a look at the board here, Yahooligan has 40 speed. Looks like Calf Creep also has 40 speed, so that leaves us to look at Flat Owl, which has 50, which actually means that our opponent is going to go first, despite the fact that we were technically going first in this round. So it looks like Flat Owl is actually going to be targeting our Yahooligan with Silent Strike. Now, Silent Strike enables 10 damage to be dealt regardless of any abilities that would reduce it, so that would have hurt Calf Creep just as much. So we're going to go ahead and apply that damage here, take one of these damage tokens and place it on Yahooligan. And now our critters get to respond. Now, because Yahooligan and Calf Creep have the same speed, It is up to you to decide which one will go first. We're going to go ahead and pick Yahooligan, and he's going to pick I Hold You Punch. That's going to deal 10 damage, and so now we move on to Calf Creep. So Calf Creep here has a couple moves. We can use Bull Rush or we can use Full Throttle. I think in this instance we're going to opt to use Bull Rush, as I think that will be just enough in tandem with Yahooligan's prior move. So check out these sweet battle animations. And with that, it looks like we've actually dealt enough damage to knock out Flat Owl, which means that we're going to gain points for however many cards are attached to Flat Owl, but Flat Owl has Film Reel attached, which means that our opponent will also gain a point, as that is that card's effect. So just to recap, as we move this card to the discard pile here, we're going to be gaining 2 research points, and that's going to be because Flat Owl had a card attached to it. Now the effect of that card, Film Reel, means that our opponent is also going to gain a research point, acting as a little bit of insurance for them. And with that, that is one turn in Critter Country. That is the setup phase and the battle phase, essentially. So I hope that that explained a little bit, and I hope that you guys have fun playing. Of course, if there's any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer them for you.
That sure was a lot of mumbo jumbo. Hope I didn't lose any of you there. See you around. And, oh yeah, welcome to Critter Country.